So Kershaw County Council has now come up with Vision Kershaw 2030. What does it mean? How did we get here? That's what we're going to discuss today. Vision 2030 begins years and years ago. It begins in 1992 with UN Agenda 21. This is a comprehensive plan to restructure the world's economy. 178 nations, some 50,000 delegates all came together to formulate this plan for the world. In their own words, they called it a comprehensive blueprint for reorganization of human society. Christiana Foucault, the Executive Secretary of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, said this: "What is occurring here is not just in this conference, but in the whole climate change process is the complete transformation of the economic structure of the world." Now, in those 178 nations who are going to plan the world economic order under climate change, George H.W. Bush signed on to it. Now, this is not a legally binding treaty. The Senate did not have to approve it. Congress had nothing to do with it. And it was implemented through soft policy. And soft policy is where the administration doles out grants and that kind of thing, so they start to change the regulations. So, 93, Bill Clinton comes in and adopts it and writes an executive order, number 12852, which restructures all the federal grants, all the federal funding regulations. Now, these come in through state grants and federal grants, transportation and grants for building this or that, and all those regulations are implemented and at the super Walmart of grants called the Council of Governments, the COG for short. Here in our area, it's the Santee Lynch's Regional Council of Governments. There's regional governance all over the place by unelected bureaucrats. And they plan these wonderful things, and then your county council will send unelected people over there, and they will get presented with all these wonderful things, all these grants that you can get if you jump through those particular hoops. And so the restrictions bring in the restructuring of the human society, the economic order that Agenda 21 is supposed to do. Now, this is a socialist, Marxist, communist manifesto, basically. And I call it the Octopus, because its tentacles run all the way through this nation. So as the Council of Governments starts doling out grants, ICLEI moves in, and that's Local Governments for Sustainability. It's a lobby group, and what they do is go around and get cities and state houses to pass ordinances and laws requiring sustainability and economic development planning. And what they did in 1994 is passed the Comprehensive Planning Act here in Columbia, down at the State House, requiring all counties to make plans for their future based on sustainability and economic development. In other words, control economic growth into certain areas and plan and all, and put in greenways and bike paths and all that sustainability, you know, the green stuff that they all talk about now. That's what we call the carrot and the stick. The carrot is this wonderful grant that you'll get, The stick is, but you got to do it our way or you're not going to get it. From there, all your special interest groups start to form 501c3 nonprofit educational groups. And their job is to propagandize the local communities into believing that this communist takeover of private property under the control of central planners who are not elected, so that eventually you will accept the idea. It sounds wonderful. Now, who would be against sustainable water? Y'all want water forever and ever. Who would be against bike paths? Well, how many bicycles you seen riding down the road lately? And we want to spend millions of dollars on bike paths. We'll get to that in a minute. But then the 501s hire consulting groups. And here in South Carolina, basically there's two big boys that play in that game. One is Alliance, who has an office directly across from the State House, and they do all kinds of planning for this economic development and sustainable development, greenways and bike paths and all. Alta is another one. Alta is out of Durham, North Carolina, and they play in the same game. Did you know that in colleges today you can get a degree in economic development, government economic development? Now I ask you, is that a fundamental function of government? To go in and control the economy and steal from us to build spec buildings or build bike paths and greenways? I don't think that's a fundamental function of government. I think that's a communist Marxist system. So these consulting groups come up with the plan. The plan, the scam is what it really is. And from there, they go start to lobby for it now. They'll go to public presentations to county council. And they get 15 minutes or more to go back and forth with county council. And now before they get there, they're sending packets and that kind of thing and calling them and all to get them prepared for the sunshine and lollipops that they're getting ready to spring on you. Now when we go to county council, when Tom, Dick, and Harry, me go to the county council, I only get 5 minutes. But a public presentation by a 501c3 recognized organization, they get all kinds of time. They can do public presentation after public presentation if they want. We can't do that. So then out of that, in the late 90s, now this was 1992, in the late 90s, here comes economic development to Kershaw County. And what we see, and anybody that's been in this county for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, has seen the idiocracy called economic development. I think we've had a couple of business come in because of tax incentives and all, and then leave. Kind of like when Mack Truck got their little deal. And then all of a sudden the deal fell through, and where'd they go? Right on out the door. And everyone that had moved into Kershaw County that supplied them, whoop, went with them. And we got hauled in the bag. Of course, our economic development team hadn't created a job in 3 years. They spent $3.8 million. They got pay raises, all kinds of stuff. There's 4 people that work over there. I can't even remember how much the budget is for these 4 people that hadn't done anything. Nothing at all. Alright, so in the late 90s that begins. 2011 is when the bicycle, pedestrian, and greenways plan was hatched by a bunch of these 501 groups, including Kershaw Health. Remember Live Well, Eat Well, or Move More, Kershaw, Eat More, Move More, Kershaw? What's the name of that damn thing? So Kershaw Health, along with a few others, create these non-profits. like Eat Smart, Move More, and Live Well Kershaw. And all these are born, are children of the big nonprofits, statewide nonprofits, that are formed by these special interest groups, healthcare, or hell, an asphalt company might be interested in putting money in this. If they get greenways and bike paths all over the place, somebody got to asphalt that stuff, don't you think? So they start, and they come up with this plan. That's where the consulting groups came up again. Now, Alta and Alliance were both involved with this bicycle, pedestrian, and greenways plan. 2013 County Council, unbeknownst to them, don't understand soft policy or hard policy, you know. They get presented this plan. And what do? They say, you know, that sounds like sunshine and lollipops, a wonderful thing. And what do? They unanimously say, well, we support this here resolution. We support this plan. I guarantee you none of them read the damn thing. It's 80 pages of socialist, communist crap. Now, those two, economic development and the bicycle, pedestrian, greenways plan combined. And that gives us Vision Kershaw 2030. Now, we got to kind of go back in time just a little bit and see how this combines. Well, in 2014, Julie Burns, County Council Chairman Julie Burns, gets elected. Ben Connell is just elected in 2016. Now these two are instrumental, along with Sammy Tucker, who formed a gang of 3, to this vision. Julie Burns is a member, put himself on the Council of Governments. Remember the Council of Governments over here, Super Walmart of grants. Sammy Tucker was already on the Super Walmart of grants. Ben Connell, he's not a COG member, but guess what? He was on the steering committee for Vision 2030. Now, old Ben, he got the Delphi technique, and everybody came to a consensus that everybody, me and you and the guy down the street and the grandmama over yonder and the guy in Bethune, we all agreed that, man, we would need a lot more bicycle paths, a whole lot less vehicles, a whole lot more people walking, and there's food deserts all over the county. Y'all know that? You know, a food desert is anybody that lives more than 1.5 miles away from fresh food, a IGA, a Piggly Wiggly, a Food Line, or something like that. And the reason they say 1.5 miles is because that's how far they want you to bicycle or walk to get to a damn grocery store. Why? Because eventually they're going to make it so expensive for you to have a car that you won't have a car. That's the overall goal anyway. One of many. So this is when really the hard policy starts to move in. Now building codes and zoning laws and all that, that's been working against you the whole time. But now, Julie Burns, a gang of 3, and those 3 stooges that are so idiotic they don't even know what they're doing. That's Al, Tom, and David. They go right along, and they start passing all these hard policies of regulations and taxes and fees. And you see the budget going up. And that's when they start buying mega sites and swampland. And boy, this is our vision. Can't y'all see? Well, what do you get? What do you get? Well, you get to pay for the mega sites and the swampland. You get to pay the taxes for your economic development, where they're going to build these big old spec buildings that sit empty. You get to pay for the economic development team that don't do anything. You get to pay for all these special interest groups who need recouping on their money. They made their investment. Now it's time for you to pay. So I know this is not a great in detail thing. You have to study something like this. If you don't know anything about Agenda 21, if you don't know anything about the Council of Government, if you don't know anything about the Comprehensive Planning Act, you cannot make a decision whether you support this kind of stuff or not. So I challenge every one of you to look through these things, to study this. Even take a picture of this chalkboard. Here, I'll get out of the way. And then start to look into it. I'm going to put some links in the description, but it's up to you to protect your own freedom and liberty and not let these Marxist and socialist Republicans and Demopublicans steal your liberty. Now in 2012, the UN convened another thing called 2030 plus 20 back in Rio. 2050 I think is what they call it now. And in there they say they want zero economic growth. They want to control growth, but they don't want zero expansion. And another thing they said was, instead of economic growth, we should focus on health and welfare. When? 2011 and 12. Guess what? That's the same time this stuff started coming out. Look at when the bicycle and pedestrian greenways plans it was hatched. 2011. It was right after that conference in Rio. I don't know about you, but I don't believe in coinkydinkies. Not when it comes into politics and NGOs and special interests. They all collude together. Another thing that they said, now Bill Clinton's boys, when Bill Clinton was in, Gary Lawrence, the advisor to President Clinton's Council on Sustainable Development, said this: participating in a UN advocated planning process would very likely bring out many of the conspiracy fixated groups and individuals in our society. Now, if you heard anything about this, the FBI calls conspiracy theorists, well, this is a fact, but that's neither here nor there, or domestic terrorists. So I'm a domestic terrorist. And if you think this is a conspiracy, you are a domestic terrorist. And if you're against this, you are a domestic terrorist. That's what they want you to believe. I go on. This segment of our society who fear one world government and a UN invasion of the United States through which our individual freedom would be stripped away, would actively work to defeat any elected official who joined the conspiracy by undertaking Agenda 21. Well, hell yeah, you would. If they came in and with hard policy starting to pass laws that met Agenda 21, of course you would. You'd be up in arms and hollering. So how do they do it? They use soft policy. So we call our process something else, such as comprehensive planning, growth management, or smart growth. Does that sound familiar? Well, guess what, boys and girls? It's here in Kershaw County and been here a while. The Octopus. The Octopus. And who's leading it right now? The Gang of Three. Julie Burns, Sammy Tucker, and Ben Connell. And the Three Stooges. Now you got Jimmy Jones who's standing against this economic growth. But I don't think even he understands what's going on. I think Julie Burns does. I don't think Sammy and Ben really do. But I think Julie Burns does. It's a snake in the grass. They're coming for your liberty. A slow piece at a time. That's what Vision Kershaw 2030 is about. Do your research, do your homework, come out to the county council and raise a little hell. Jeff Maddox, good day.